So as we've been hearing today, the vaccine rollout is continuing at pace. But for some in the county, it can't come soon enough. And Claire is here to tell us why.
Well, this is all about when young adults with learning disabilities will get the vaccine. So far, as a group, they have not been prioritised. Nikki Clark is in Shrewsbury and is thrilled her daughter Emily is on the list to be vaccinated at home and soon. And Nikki's with us now. Morning, Nikki.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tell us about Emily.
So Emily is 23 years old and she has a severe learning disability, and she has also is on the autistic spectrum. And I wanted to, if it's okay, just to make it very clear, because I think there's quite a lot of confusion out there between learning difficulties and learning disability, which obviously is completely different and is to do with cognitive impairment and often developmental delay. So in Emily's case, she is in the community, she's in her own property, but she has a very high support package. So she's got support workers with her 24 hours a day, 3 to 1, who are, I have to say as well, absolutely fantastic. Now, the added complication is that, like many people with a learning disability, Emily is needle phobic. So obviously, this is a problem and a barrier, and something that we're all working very, very hard to reduce. So reducing her anxieties. I've put a social story up on Twitter that I wrote with her support workers, because vaccines are life. We know this, and it is slightly complicated because learning disabled people with a severe learning disability and people with Down syndrome are in tier 4. Now that's nationally, but it's very different as to who is being called for vaccine and who isn't. And I think what it needs really from central government is a standardised approach so that everybody understands that everybody with a learning disability is facing the same level of risk. We're talking about 6 times the number of learning disabled people are dying from COVID than the rest of the population. And if they're aged 18 to 34, 30 times as many people with a learning disability are dying. So, and it doesn't matter whether you're mildly affected, moderately affected, or severely learning disabled, the risk is the same. So as you said, joy that Emily's been called by her GP. So huge thanks to GPs as well, who are doing a fantastic job.
So when did Emily get the call then about this?
Last week. So it was the other problem is supply. So obviously everybody is facing a supply problem. And when I say that, I mean that the vaccine has to be used very quickly. So if a batch arrives, the ideal is that people can go to vaccination centres, either small hubs or larger hubs, and be vaccinated. The problem is when you live in your own home in the community, not in a care home, that is a tricky one. So obviously the GP was fantastically phoning up and saying, can we go out and vaccinate Emily today? Which was, of course, the news we wanted. But there's a little bit of work that has to be done first to try and diminish Emily's needle phobia.
How are you going to do that then? What's the process? And forgive me for asking because I don't know, but is Emily verbal?
No, please don't. Yes. So Emily is verbal, yes, but on a very her language capacity is very limited, and she doesn't always understand as well as people think. So she might say yes or no, but she hasn't necessarily understood due to her learning disability what's being asked of her. So it's a combination of tools that many parents, carers of learning disabled people and support workers use with learning disabled people to try and be able to explain. So visual clues, pictures, the social stories are vital. And again, it's all this work that has to be done when it's very tricky to be able to plan ahead. So obviously with the autistic side of things that impacts Emily's learning disability, sudden changes, a doctor suddenly arriving, even a well-loved GP, because Emily's got a fantastic GP who's very Very, very respectful of Emily's need, talks directly to Emily, for example, not to everyone around her. And she is very fond of this GP, but again, arriving with a needle isn't necessarily something that can happen, which is absolutely no one's fault. It's not the clinician's fault. It's just another hurdle that learning disabled people have to work past with the support of those who love them.
Given then that you're going to have to prepare her for this visually and verbally, when do you expect that then she will be able to have the vaccine?
Well, we're introducing the social story so as soon as possible. So, for example, we're calling it Happy Injection Day. And the wording of it is very careful because obviously it's a first injection, as everybody knows. We need to have 2. And then with the end result that there'll be a Happy Injection Day party.
Oh, brilliant.
And it's something that is very difficult to explain. I mean, for learning disabled people like Emily, everything has gone from their lives. So going swimming can't happen anymore. Going to a cafe can't happen anymore. And that's no different to anybody else in the world whose lives have been, really impacted by this. But when you have a learning disability, you don't understand why.
Yeah.
And for example, everyone in the house is wearing masks. I mean, the amazing levels of health and safety and precautions that staff are taking are absolutely superb. Temperature checks twice a day and all of these things. But Emily still can't wear a mask. And I often wonder, when you're a learning disabled person and everyone in the world is wearing a mask except you take that on board, I think.
Yeah,
and in Emily's case, it became horrific because nothing that the very few things that Emily has to enjoy in her life go, and you don't know why.
Nikki, when this has happened, can we talk to you again and find out how it all went?
Are you sure you want to?
Yes, absolutely. But I wish you lots
much.
of luck with Emily. I mean, not easy at all. And I hope the vaccination goes well. And let's talk to you afterwards, and you can let us know what you did and everything, and that would be wonderful.